Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, today we're going to be talking about just kind of what's going on in the market overall. Bitcoin specifically, we've had some really interesting news coming from Google of all places. So there's a ton of things to go over today. And so anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. And starting out, I want to talk about the crypto bubbles, because what we're seeing today on the crypto bubbles, very healthy pullback, basically market wide. It's been a pretty crazy past 24 hours or so. And we saw kind of a flash crash. We've seen unbelievable amounts of liquidations. We can see in the chart, basically almost everything is kind of down. I would say average of about maybe 10%. We are seeing more that are down more than that, and we're seeing some that are down less than that. But average, I would say, was kind of about a 10% market-wide pullback. We're seeing a lot of alts getting kind of wrecked. And so if we look at the liquidations, what we can see is over 24 hours, over a $1.5 billion liquidated, which is an insane amount. In my opinion, this is a pretty good thing to see. As we can see, it's like 90% longs overall. If we look at kind of the breakdown by exchanges, we can see, Bitfinex 100%, 73, 82, 70, 70, 83, 77, 78, kind of the market average overall. And this is 4 hour. If we look at 24 hour, it's going to be 89% long overall. So obviously, as we can see, a ton of liquidations happening. One thing that we can see, though, is primarily coming from alts. We can see Bitcoin actually only the third largest liquidation amount at 164, 165 million almost. Then we got, Doge, XRP, Sol, Sui kind of being the next larger ones. But the two big ones is actually ETH at number 2 and then others at 486 million. And so others basically being anything that's not something listed on here. This is probably going to be like a lot of altcoins, basically just the alt market overall, people trading things that are, maybe some more like smaller, like micro caps, stuff like that. But as we can see, a ton of long leverage getting absolutely destroyed in the past like 24 hours or so. We can see open interest gone down a little bit. We're kind of climbing back from what our all-time highs were. 24-hour liquidation though, 200%. On up 200% on the day, which is kind of crazy. Also, we're seeing a massive spike in volume today, up almost 100%, 80% to be exact. And this is, in my opinion, kind of what we needed to see. I know there's probably a lot of people out there who're scared. There's probably a lot of people out there who are a little bit sad, maybe. And if that's the case, like, you should probably be thinking about, well, what's going on? Why? What got me here? How did I get to this point? And make sure that you don't do it again, and consider this as a learning lesson. Hopefully it's not too expensive of a learning lesson, but if it is, I guess maybe it'll be all that more memorable. But what we can see is kind of looking at the market overview dashboard, is we can see open interest has kind of continued to pull back from that explosion that we've seen. However, though, obviously still up huge. Things looking pretty good from open interest, just kind of wholesale within the market. This is looking a lot better in my opinion. We can see on the 24 hour, things basically going from overbought to neutral within like the span of a day or two. This to me is a much better situation of what we're looking at. Things are kind of pulling out of overbought almost entirely. I think we've got Curve and 1 million baby Doge are the only two sitting in overbought. Everything else is either sitting now within the stronger neutral category, with even a couple pulling back into the weak and oversold. So obviously, in my opinion, a really healthy thing to see within the market. I know there's probably a lot of people getting scared, but this is just kind of what the market does, right? All the people who have rushed in over the past 2, 3, 4 weeks who don't really even understand anything about Bitcoin, but they got in because it hit 100K or whatever. This is kind of exactly what was expected. Whenever we see super strong moves to the upside, this is generally something that's about to follow. And so we can see on the exchange liquidation map actually favoring a move to the upside, because shorts are now kind of the primary ones in charge. We can see same type of thing from the 7-day as well. So this is something we've been looking for a very, very long time, that there was going to be a move favoring liquidating longs, because we've seen so much move to the upside. Everybody's jumping in on longs, and if that is the case, then obviously we're going to be seeing a move to the downside to liquidate those, at least at some point in the future. Now obviously we have seen that. We've seen a really strong move to the downside, and now there's a whole bunch of money sitting to the upside, and a move to the upside is now kind of the point of, or the movement that would cause the maximum amount of pain. And so I do think at some point we will see that kind of come to back to the upside. As we've seen over the past month at this point, this is always pretty good at predicting direction, but it doesn't really give much insight at all on predicting timing of that direction. And so we've been seeing that there should be a move to the downside for weeks now. When that actually comes, though, is very, very hard to say. And so same thing that we're seeing here. I think it's pretty safe to say that we're probably going to be seeing a move to the upside here at some point, But again, when, I don't know. Now, if I'm to take a guess, I think there's kind of two things that happen. We'll get into the Bitcoin chart here in a second that kind of goes into that further. But before we jump into that, I want to take a look at the fear and greed index. We have pulled out of extreme greed. I do think, given kind of what we're seeing in the market right now, I think maybe we could even continue to see a pullback, maybe into the neutral, possibly very, very like momentarily dipping into fear. I kind of think where we're at in the market, I think getting back into the fear, I think extreme fear, in my opinion, is probably off the table. Again, anything can happen, but I think extreme fear is incredibly unlikely. Dipping into fear, I think, is unlikely but possible. I do think it's somewhat likely that we probably dip into like the neutral territory before we kind of start to see a move back to the upside, where we can see greed and extreme greed coming back, because obviously it is in a bull run, and so we are going to be kind of in a greed-based market, where when it's a bear market, it's going to be primarily a fear-based market. We saw that kind of basically all through end of July, August, September. It was like all fear all the time, and now we've kind of been in all greed all the time, at least for the past about month or so. That's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, going back to the two things that I think we can see, looking at the Bitcoin chart, there's two things that I think that are kind of most likely. First one, I think, is we see some level of dip and pull back down to this otherwise like macro trend line that we have been seeing. There's a possibility that we could even break as far as like maybe 70,000 range. I don't think we would probably drop anything below this, just because with us being in an uptrend, I would expect us to continue to hold a new higher low. So basically anything kind of above the 67,000 range would essentially keep a higher low. The next option that I'm seeing would probably be something kind of just doing what we're doing right now. Maybe bounce between kind of this support and resistance that we have seen to kind of hold here. This seems to be a pretty decent level of support. This seems to be a pretty decent level of resistance. We have broken above 100,000, but never really held at least too far above. We can see in some of these candles, we do get above it, even up to like the 101, 102,000 range, but nothing really too far sustained above that 100,000 mark. We can see again pulling right back into this level of support. And so I do think there's a possibility that maybe we just kind of dance around, do kind of a whole bunch of nothing over the next, weeks, months, however long that's going to be. Essentially wash people out, let people get bored, let people go away, and then we'll move to the upside again, and then they'll catch the next top, as most of these people normally do, as things kind of get super overblown and all this type of stuff. There is a possibility. There's two things that we could see here. Again, we could see, even if we just kind of sat around within this range and did nothing, this trend line, this macro trend line, is going to eventually intersect with this range that we are sitting in, at least as of right now. So there is the possibility that we potentially just range within this kind of really relatively tight band, and then we see kind of a bounce once we hit this trend line. The goal of these market makers is usually, in my opinion, to wash people out, get people afraid, get as many people to sell before they continue the run up, right? And what better way to freak people out than would be to head down to 80,000? I mean, that would, I think, really shake a lot of people who have been participating in crypto, especially if they just got in the past couple of weeks. I think, this would be calling for the, oh, well, Bitcoin's dead. Oh, well, this. Oh, well, that. Oh, well, whatever else, right? I think there's a lot that we could see happening there. But there is still this option. Look, I mean, we are squeezing on the Bollinger Bands. And usually when we see a squeeze on the Bollinger Bands, it does provide an opportunity for volatility. I do think we can squeeze a little bit tighter, just because the low here we're seeing is about 93,000 and the high is about 101. So relatively tight, but still I think we could maybe see it squeeze a little bit tighter, particularly if we really start to consolidate pretty tightly here over the next couple of days. Usually, when we start to see the Bollinger Band squeeze like this, we are going to see a point of volatility. Again, since we're in a bull market, I think it's maybe more likely than not that we see a kind of a jump to the upside, but it could be a good opportunity to, maybe gap down to this trend line that we have been seeing kind of hold for the past couple months. This could be something that I think would shake a lot of people out. A lot of people would get scared. A lot of people would leave, go away, and stop paying attention to crypto, which I think is ultimately kind of the long-term goal here. Now, what we can see at the RSI, though, we are sitting pretty well within kind of the RSI band. We did have a long period of time where we were sitting in the overbought territory. We haven't really gone down in price per se, but RSI definitely has gotten a little bit weaker. So, possibly concerning signs, potentially. But I do think, given that we've consolidated at prices basically near or at all-time highs, still looking, I would say, potentially pretty good. If you are interested in trading Bitcoin or anything else, please feel free to use my link in the description below. I have partnered with BTCC for another month. So if you are interested, they are still doing that 10% bonus on first time deposits. So if you have, let's say, $5 $5,000 that you want to deposit, they would essentially give you $500 for free that you can use to trade on. And if you are wanting to trade anyway, you might as well get that 10% bonus. To me, it seems like a pretty decent deal. In addition to that 10% bonus, you do have the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user, as well as they've been around for 13 years. So, you don't have to worry about them just kind of disappearing overnight. Obviously, anything can happen, but with BTCC being around for this long, I think the odds of that happening are incredibly unlikely. In these types of bull runs, there's a lot of exchanges that kind of just pop up because there's new people around. Obviously, BTCC is not one of those, given that they've been around pretty much longer than all of us. They also have 300 plus crypto futures and up to 500x leverage. I never trade 500x leverage, but if that's something you're wanting to do, it is a possibility. And then also no VPN or KYC necessary if that is something that you're interested in. So like I said, if you are interested, just feel free to go ahead and check the description below. Now, moving on though, I did want to check one of the last things. There's some mild speculation, I would say, that some of this crypto dip is because of this announcement that Sundar Pichai announced here just yesterday. And this is essentially a quantum computing chip that Google has released that is really, really quite nuts if what they're saying is true, which there's really no reason to believe it's not. But basically, they had a breakthrough that can reduce errors exponentially as we scale up using more qubits, cracking a 30-year challenge in the field. Basically, in benchmark tests, their new chip solved a standard computation in less than 5 minutes that would take the leading supercomputer over 10, I think it's septillion years or something like that. Basically, 10 to the 25 years, far beyond the age of the universe. So obviously, this is insanely massive news, right? I mean, if you don't kind of understand what's going on here, basically this is like massive, like several orders of magnitude improvement on what we have already, which obviously is a really, really good thing. We can see in this follow-up post that he's basically saying like this is going to essentially allow for useful applications like drug discovery, fusion energy, battery design, and more. I mean, basically, we throw all of our hard problems at this quantum computing chip, and it can do it all basically instantly because of the boost in computing power that we are seeing within this. So this is obviously massive news. There's been a ton of speculation floating through the crypto industry of, well, what does this mean? Does this mean that they can now crack Bitcoin? They now can brute force the SHA-256 hash, and now they can figure out essentially how to hack Bitcoin. Can they go brute force everybody's seed phrases? Can they go through, like, what can they do, right? It's good questions. There's a lot of people who are a heck of a lot smarter than I am saying that they would need, this chip itself is about 105 qubits of like processing power or whatever. And there's a lot of people who are, like I said, a lot smarter than I am that are saying that they would need something somewhere to around like several million qubits. So obviously not something that you can do with one quantum computing chip. Now, maybe if you had an entire, quantum computing chip farm, that is something that is potentially a possibility. But I always kind of default to as things like this happen, as there's an action, there's always kind of a reaction, right? And so what we could see potentially is, maybe there's a hashing algorithm that is quantum resistant, or maybe there's a hashing algorithm that is generative and it continues to change with time, so it can never truly be like pinned down by quantum computing. Maybe there's something else that comes to pass that I can't even dream up of right now, because I can tell you, if you would have told me 2 days ago that there's a chip that exists that essentially can do in less than 5 minutes what the leading supercomputer today would do in 10 to the 25 degree years, I probably would have said, yeah, that's funny, whatever, man, right? But here it is. So, I mean, there's a lot of this stuff happening. People always change, people adapt, technology adapts, processes adapt, everything adapts, right? So I think a lot of the FUD of like, oh, this is going to kill Bitcoin, I just don't really believe that. It totally could, but I just don't really believe that. And from like the mining side, I mean, there have been a lot of people like, oh, well, this could just mine all of the Bitcoin now. Well, yeah, but remember, Bitcoin has a difficulty adjustment for this exact reason, right? I mean, if people start introducing quantum computing chips into the Bitcoin mining algorithm, well, then it's going to change the difficulty, right? And now it's just going to be that much harder to mine a Bitcoin. So it's one of those things where it's like, Bitcoin's already has some of this flexibility built into it. So that to me is just not even a concern at all. The thing that is a semi-concern is actually cracking the hashing algorithm, actually brute forcing seed phrases. That type of stuff is what is like somewhat of a concern, right? And to that, I would say there's probably going to be some Bitcoin upgrades that come through in the future that are going to make Bitcoin more resistant to this. I'm pretty confident that that'll happen. Just kind of because of what we see in the future, I think that's something that we will end up seeing. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe, because it really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything you want me to see, that'd be a really good way to do that. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.